All right, let's jump straight into this explainer by looking at a pretty wild paradox. I want you to imagine two fathers standing side by side. One of them is highly educated, incredibly smart, and super respected in his field. He literally works his tail off his entire life, but he's constantly stressed about money. Now look at the other father. He barely has any formal education to speak of, yet he manages to build this immense, lasting wealth. So how on earth does that happen? Well, today we're unpacking Robert Kiyosaki's core financial philosophy. And spoiler alert, it is not some get-rich-quick scheme. It's entirely about looking at the vastly different mindsets of these two dads side by side and using that comparison to completely rewire how we think about money. So let me ask you this. If you want to be rich, should you get good grades and find a nice, safe job? I mean, for generations, the standard answer has been a massive, unquestionable yes. But this explainer fundamentally challenges that conventional wisdom. Because honestly, doing exactly what everyone else does might just guarantee you end up with the exact same financial stress as everyone else. So let's look at a totally different approach. Section 1, A Tale of Two Fathers. The middle class versus the investor. Let's dig into this side-by-side comparison to see how these differing philosophies play out. On the left side, we have the poor dad. Now, this was Robert's actual father. He was a highly educated guy who did literally everything society tells you to do, but he just could not get ahead financially. He is the ultimate representation of the traditional middle-class mindset. On the right side, we have the rich dad. This was his best friend, Mike's dad. Little formal education, but he was a hardcore business owner and investor. He just intrinsically understood money. And bouncing these two worldviews off each other is going to show us exactly why the middle class gets stuck. You see it right away when young Robert asks them both how to get rich. The contrast is staggering. Poor dad just gave the standard line, study hard, get a good job. But, that didn't sit right with Robert. It didn't explain the wealth he saw around him. That curiosity led him to rich dad, who handed him a totally different paradigm. He said, don't work for money. You need to learn how to make money work for you. Moving on to section 2, working for money. Fear, desire, and the cycle. This next part really exposes the emotional trap most of us fall into. So, to teach Robert and his friend Mike their very first lesson, Rich Dad gave them this mind-numbingly boring, super low-paying job. And as you'd expect, Robert got mad. He wanted to quit. But that was exactly what Rich Dad was waiting for. He dropped this absolute bombshell. The rich don't work for money. He used that frustrating little job to teach them about emotional control, basically saying that reacting to money problems with anger or frustration is exactly how most adults ruin their financial lives. He basically mapped out the psychological treadmill that people spend their whole lives on. It starts with fear, right? The fear of being broke pushes you to go to work. Then you get a paycheck, and the desire for stuff makes you spend it all. And because of this constant push and pull of fear and desire, people stay at jobs they absolutely hate. They freeze up, they never take risks, and they end up completely dependent on a boss. They're letting their emotions drive the car instead of learning to manage their money. And this brings us to a huge, glaring divide between the two fathers when it comes to education. Poor dad honestly believed the school system was the golden ticket. But rich dad, he thought schools were basically factories for creating hardworking employees. He argued they completely fail at teaching you how money actually functions in the real world. For rich dad, having financial literacy, really grasping cash flow, taxes, business setups, was just infinitely more valuable than straight A's. All right, section 3, assets versus liabilities. The biggest lesson. If you tune out everything else in this explainer, please pay attention here, because understanding just two words can completely flip your financial script. If you strip away all the stuffy economic jargon and complicated accounting rules, Rich Dad's definition of an asset is just brilliantly simple. An asset is simply something that puts money into your pocket. That's it. It generates real income for you, whether you are actively working or sitting on a beach. We're talking rental properties, dividend stocks, and actual business. It feeds you. A liability, on the other hand, takes money out of your pocket. It's a drain. And Kiyosaki points out that the absolute biggest mistake people make, actually, scratch that, the fundamental reason the middle class struggles is that they constantly buy liabilities while genuinely believing they're buying assets. Let's look at this side by side because it really paints a picture. Take real estate. The poor dad mindset says you should pour all your savings into a massive personal house, calling it your biggest asset. But every month it drains your pocket with mortgages, taxes, and a new roof. It's a liability. Meanwhile, the rich dad mindset buys a rental property that actually pays him every month. While the middle class is drowning in consumer debt for luxury cars to look wealthy, the actual wealthy are buying commercial trucks, stocks, and intellectual property that quietly makes them rich. Section 4. Escaping the rat race. Breaking the cycle. So, what happens when this confusion between assets and liabilities collides with the real world? Well, it creates what Kiyosaki calls the rat race. And we've all seen this. It's an exhausting treadmill. You work hard, you get paid, you pay your bills, but then, and here is the trap, you get a raise, so you go out and buy bigger things, a nicer car, a bigger house. Suddenly you're deeper in debt, which means you have to work even harder just to keep your head above water. Trying to buy comfort and security this way literally just guarantees higher anxiety. The real secret sauce here is what you do when your income goes up. The poor dad philosophy thinks a bigger salary is the cure for everything, but the middle class just scales up their lifestyle. The rich dad knew better. He knew wealth only snowballs when you take that extra income and immediately buy more assets. It's a beautiful loop. You buy assets, they make you income, you use that income to buy more assets, boom. And we can't ignore the legal reality here. These two paths experience the system entirely differently. If you follow the poor dad path as an employee, you earn money, the government taxes you right off the top, and you try to scrape by on the leftovers. But the rich dad path? Business owners earn money, they spend what they need to grow, and they only pay taxes on what's left over at the end. The wealthy know the rules of the game and use them to their massive advantage. Section 5. The Mindset of Wealth, Psychology and Action. As we peel back the layers here, it's so clear that money is deeply, deeply psychological. Getting stuck isn't just bad math. Just look at how they viewed risk side by side. Poor dad was terrified of it. He thought avoiding risk was the only way to survive, terrified of losing a dime. But rich dad, he realized that in a fast-moving world, playing it completely safe is ironically the most dangerous thing you can do. The wealthy know that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. It's literally how you build financial intelligence. You have to take managed risks. So, how do we pivot to the rich dad mindset? Kiyosaki's rule is to mind your own business. Now hold on, that doesn't mean you go march into your boss's office and quit tomorrow. It means keep your day job to pay your bills, but relentlessly start building side hustles and investing on your off hours. You are trying to build up passive income streams so that eventually you don't need that salary at all. Your job pays for your present, but your assets buy your future. Now let's keep it real for a second and look at the whole picture. Critics of the book absolutely point out that it oversimplifies some pretty complex economics, and yeah, it doesn't really hand you a step-by-step instruction manual. Some even suspect the two dads framing might be a bit exaggerated to make a point. But you know what? Even the harshest critics have to admit that these concepts have completely revolutionized how millions of people think about wealth. It's a huge mindset shift. Because ultimately, what we're looking at isn't really a story about dollars and cents. It's a profound look at how our internal beliefs build our external reality. It's two completely opposite ways of navigating life. One father believed safety creates success. The other believed financial education creates freedom. So as we close out this explainer, I want to leave you with a real gut check question. When you look at your own bank accounts, your own career path, and honestly, your own anxieties, which dad's advice are you actually living by? Are you just working for money, or are you finally ready to learn how to make it work for you? Take a serious look at your own assets and liabilities and decide exactly which side of the comparison you want to be on.